Hello, everybody. Welcome to Short Fiction Online. This course, as I'm sure you all know, is a comparative literature course. So it's 195, 135, and section 90. My name is Lauren Finelli Teague. I will be your instructor this spring semester. And what I wanted to do in this first initial video is most importantly introduce the course to you, outline some of our course and departmental goals, and then also review the structure of the course, since this is an online course, review the structure of the course in more detail by kind of going over some of the specifics in the syllabus. Step one is that you should read the syllabus. Duh. It's posted under the syllabus tab, which is useful and self-explanatory. So before you really do anything else, you should review the syllabus very carefully, because all of the instructions for the course and how it's going to be laid out and conducted is sort of hopefully clearly marked out for you. But I'm going to review it nonetheless. And if you have any questions about any aspect of the syllabus, you can always email me. My email address is conveniently on page 1 of the syllabus. It's lawfinel@rutgers.edu. So again, if you have any questions, never hesitate to be in touch with me. I'm pretty regular with my feedback and response time, so feel free to reach out at any time. Okay, so firstly, a little bit about short fiction. This is a comparative literature class. Not the same thing as an English department course. English departments tend to focus on literatures that are American or British. Comparative literature does just that. It looks at literatures from all over the globe and puts them into conversation with one another. We take into account different time periods, different social contexts, different historical contexts, different languages. All of the stories that we're going to be reading will be in an English translation, but these stories do come from all parts of the globe. So we'll be reading stories from the Italian, Chinese. We're going to be reading stories from German. We're going to be reading stories from Africa. We're going to be reading a lot of American authors as well, including some African American authors, some Native American authors, Taiwanese American authors, and though we are going to be focusing more on sort of 19th, 20th century works this semester, since I've taught this class before, I've really tried to pull in really, really contemporary short fiction pieces. So we're going to be reading some pieces from the newest collection of the Best American Short Stories anthology from 2018. We're going to be reading stories that were really just recently published in the New Yorker and other various print sources. So it's going to be an interesting sort of eclectic mix of readings, which I'm excited about. Yay. Okay, so the goals of this course is to help you to become critical readers, critical writers, and also to really take into account how stories resonate with one another, how they diverge from one another, how they challenge one another, particularly stories that are coming from, as I said, different social milieus or different areas of the globe. And we're going to be looking at certain fundamental elements of short stories, which we will do this week. Right off the bat, we'll be looking at specific terms that we'll use throughout the course of the semester in order for us to sort of speak about short stories. So I'm talking about setting. I'm talking about narrative perspective. I'm talking about plot. I'm talking about character development, central characters, supporting characters, themes, motifs, etc., style. So these are all terms that we will review in more detail in the next day or two, and then we will utilize them throughout the course of the semester in order to ask certain questions, respond critically to these texts. Okay? So my goals for this class are just that, to get you to become sharper, more informed readers of literatures from all over the world, and also to really hone and practice your critical and comparative writing skills. That's something that we're going to really focus on throughout the course of the semester, and we'll do that in different ways. Sometimes we'll be doing forum writing, which will be like a discussion forum. Those will be a little bit shorter, a little bit more informal in nature, will help you to sort of answer some specific questions, get the wheels turning to help you to start to develop and formalize some of your ideas and responses in relation to a text or a set of texts. Some of them will be a kind of middle ground, where it'll be a slightly more formalized and slightly longer short writing assignments that we'll do over the course of the semester. And then we'll do, of course, 2 formal papers, a midterm paper, and also a final paper. I'll go into a little bit more detail about them in a few minutes, where you will have to then sort of sustain a line of thinking, put 2 or 3 texts in critical conversation with one another, and develop an argument, an original argument or a thesis in relation to how those texts are resonating with one another in some specific way. And I will, of course, guide you throughout this whole process, so breathe and don't panic. Okay, moving on. This course does fulfill one of the core requirements in the arts and humanities, and that's on your syllabus. I know this is a very important point for many of you, is like when you can check the box of what this course is going to satisfy for you in terms of your requirements. So I've listed that. Let's talk about the structure of the class. Okay, there's going to be a couple of different parts that we have to get into so that you have a clear sense of them. So first of all, every week will be broken down into 2 halves. So Monday to Wednesday night, we'll do 1 set of readings. Thursday morning to Sunday evening, we'll do a 2nd set of readings. We will have discussion forums for each set. What those will be is I will post a series of questions under the forums tab, and I will label the specific forum that it is. I'll outline the authors we're talking about or the stories themselves. I will lay out for you a couple of questions that deal sometimes with 1 set of readings. A lot of the questions will be kind of comparative in nature. And you will be expected to post twice, at least twice, in relation to one of these questions. You do not have to answer all of the questions that I pose. You can choose 1 to focus on or 2 that you want to focus on. You'll post an initial response, which will be a little bit longer. That will be 200 to 300 words, okay? And it should not be a summary of the text. It should be a specific answer to a question. You should pull in from 1 or 2 of the texts a quote or quotes to help you sort of support whatever point that you're trying to make. And then you're going to post a secondary response, which is shorter, 100 to 200 words. And that should actually respond to one of the posts that your classmates contributed. So you could say, you could try to expand that person's argument a little bit. Oh, that was a really good idea. I didn't think about that. Also, it reminded me of blah, blah, and blah. You can respectfully disagree. That's interesting, but I took a different point of view, and here's why. Or I really like what you said about this. It relates to my initial post because of X, Y, and Z. So the secondary post is really to try to sort of emulate a discussion thread, which is so central to really learning about and unpacking literature, is being able to kind of discuss it with other people and hear other people's ideas and interpretations to sort of expand or to refine your own thinking about these texts. Okay, so that will be a primary sort of aspect of this course, is that we will have 2 discussion forums per week for 2 different sets of readings, and I will post an initial response so that to one of our discussion forums, the first one, so that you get a sense of the type of quality or engagement in terms of your writing that I'm looking for. Okay, there will always be some kind of lecture that accompanies each sets of readings. Lectures can be found in two places. There's lectures under the Lessons tab. There are also lectures that have been included under the Resources tab. If you look under your Resources tab, all of your readings are organized by week. So if you clicked on, week 1, you would have PDFs of certain readings. You would also have typically links to either biographies of the authors or an actual lecture that I've done. Some of the lectures will be links. Sometimes I will post like a video where I can sort of review some of the major themes or points that we're going to be looking at that particular week for that particular set of readings. Sometimes I've actually written out formal lessons. People learn differently. So some people like kind of reading a lecture. Some people do better with something a little bit more interactive, like looking at something online off of YouTube. Some people like hearing a lecture. So I'm going to kind of mix it up throughout the course of the semester so that everybody at some point sort of has a medium that works for them. So again, for the lectures, look under the Resources tab, also under the Lessons tab. Okay, you can find some important background information, historical information, social information to help situate you in the readings that we're doing. Sometimes I've even included links to author interviews. I've included links to sometimes staged readings of certain stories so that you can hear them as opposed to just reading them. Again, we're trying to provide different resources, different outlets, different mediums to help enhance your learning experience and your reading experience of these different texts. Before I go any further, we do have an anthology that I'm using for this class. Okay, it's The Story and Its Writer. It's the Compact 8th edition by Anne Charters. It's on your syllabus with a link from Amazon. You can rent it. I think it's like $24 to rent. A lot of these stories, though, anything that we're not reading in the anthology, I've provided for you, either links to specific stories online or I've given you PDFs to read. A lot of these, if you don't want to rent it, a lot of these stories are publicly accessible, so you could probably do a quick Google search and find them online. I don't like forcing students to buy books, but I am suggesting that you do have access to this one. You could even take it out from the library. It'll just be easier for you to have something, tangible in hand that you can refer to, because I do refer to a lot of the stories in it. But if you don't want to, a lot of those stories are publicly accessible. And if you ever find that you're not able to access one of the stories, just email me and I will try to provide it for you. Okay? Okay, so we've done lectures, we've done class discussions through our forums. We are going to have some short writing assignments throughout the course of the semester. We'll have 3. I will announce them at least a week in advance. You will complete them under the Assignments tab. I used to do them timed, and I don't do that anymore. What will happen is I will post a prompt for you that will deal with a specific set of readings for that week. I will tell you what they will be. It will not be a surprise in that way. You can use your text. You should use your text because I will expect you to be quoting from whatever stories that we're reading. And most of them will ask you to put 2 texts in conversation with one another. I'll highlight a specific theme and you'll have to, compose a short, let's say 3-paragraph response. I have more specific instructions on what I'm expecting from a short writing assignment that you can find under the Resources tab. And I'll outline a little bit more clearly what I'm looking for, and I'll even give you like a model or 2 before you do your first short writing assignment. But there will be 3 throughout the course of the semester. They'll be pretty evenly spaced out. I will announce them well in advance. If you have a problem with when I schedule them for, you can always email me in advance and I will, schedule it for you during a different day. You have between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. on the day that I assign it to complete it and submit it. So 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on the day that I assign it, you can complete and submit the work anytime within that period. So those are your short writing assignments. They'll be worth 20% of your grade. Your class discussions will be worth 30% of your grade, and your midterm and your final paper will be worth 50% of your grade. okay? So we will have two formal papers, a midterm paper that will be 3 to 5 pages, and a final paper that will be 5 to 7 pages. Again, I will post a series of prompts for you under the assignments tab for each of those. I will do that well in advance, at least 2.5, sometimes even 3 weeks out, just so that you can start to percolate on some of the themes that I'm highlighting, some of the ways that I'm asking you to look at certain combinations of the text that we're reading. You are very welcome to ask me questions ahead of submitting your work, and we will actually be doing thesis workshops before the papers are due, about a week before the papers are due, or a couple of days before. We usually take a pause in our readings for your midterm paper, and specifically, we'll take a pause from reading anything new. We'll have a couple of days, almost a week, to allow you time to structure an introduction, a thesis statement, and we will do a whole forum on giving feedback on that. So I will give you feedback on your thesis, and I will also, it's the expos teacher in me, I also teach expository writing, so I will give you some feedback on your thesis and allow your fellow classmates to also give you some feedback. I'll also provide kind of a model of how to evaluate whether or not someone has a real analytical thesis at stake, so that you can get better, not just at, sort of providing feedback for your fellow students, but most importantly, so that you can identify for yourself, what makes for a really analytical and productive thesis statement versus something more observational and obvious that's not going to allow you to do the kind of critical work that's required of this type of a class, okay? So that is basically how you will be evaluated in this class, and that will be the structure of the class. One other note in terms of your forum posts. Your forum posts I sort of use as a kind of attendance for this class, since we are meeting via, the internet basically. You're allowed to miss 3 discussion forums. That's not 3 weeks of readings. That's 3 different discussion forums without any type of penalization. It's sort of like missing 3 classes. So you get 3 classes that you can miss. No harm, no foul. I don't suggest that you do it, but if you need to do it, we all get busy or have an off week. It happens. I've built that into the schedule. But beyond that, when you start missing more than 3, 1 point will come off of your final grade, okay? So that's the penalization, and that's why it's important to stay on top of this class. Because it's an online class, it's easy to, and I've seen it happen a lot of times because I've taught online classes before, and I've taught this class multiple times before, in person and online, where students just sort of get overwhelmed and kind of fall behind, and instead of picking their head up and emailing me and saying like, oh my God, I'm totally behind, how do I make up this work? They kind of just put their head in the sand, and it just gets worse and worse and harder for them to catch up. So if this happens to you, and it sometimes happens early on when there's just the mass pandemonium of getting your class together, please email me immediately so that we can set up a plan to get you caught up and get you back on track. Okay, the class is very structured and it moves relatively quickly. So it's important to not do this at your own pace and to keep up with the pace of the course. Okay, I've given you a list of all of the readings that we're doing. I've split each week into, like I said, half and half of the week. So I've given you the breakdown of dates of when we're doing what readings to make it a little bit easier for you. I have information on plagiarism and academic integrity. I've given you links to Rutgers' official site on academic integrity and plagiarism. Just like, don't do it. Like, just don't plagiarize. I mean, we find out, and it's really easy to find out. It's also very easy to inadvertently plagiarize these days. Everything is accessible online. It's very, very easy to just pull an idea from somewhere else that you've read, or pull, a small, small group of texts that you've read someplace else and pass it off as your own. When in doubt, you have to cite where you're getting your sources. If you're confused on whether or not you need to, again, be in touch with me, and I'll be happy to straighten out any confusion that you have. But generally, just write your own work. And if you have questions about how to cite, I've given you links on MLA citations in text and for works cited pages. I've given you a link to the OWL, the Purdue University site, which is great in terms of citing resources. That's also linked on our Sakai site as well. But again, if you have any questions about citations, plagiarism, academic integrity, please be in touch with me. I'm happy to clear anything up for you. Students with disabilities, I've given you a link on the syllabus that you can go to get registered so that you any services that you need or accommodations that you need can be provided for you. And I think that that's basically it. I know I've said a lot, but I did want to at least walk you through and highlight sort of the more important elements about the structure of the class and some of the goals of the class. If you have any questions, please be in touch, and away we go. Let's enjoy this semester together. Okay, bye.